Kendrick Lamar dropping a random surprise album on a Friday to bless our weekend in GNX. But Tim, is the surprise album any good?
This came out of nowhere, and Kendrick does not miss with his albums. He teased us with this with a little snippet that came out maybe 10 minutes before the album dropped, and amazingly, that snippet isn't even featured on the album. And this is the first project that he's released since the infamous diss tracks that came out earlier this year. So I was very excited to get my teeth stuck into it and see what was going on.
There was a lot of rumours about if he would release an album before the Super Bowl, but wasn't too much around when it was going to happen. So I'm really happy that this has come out. It'll make that performance better. And I think it gives us a chance of a new Kendrick tour in the UK and at some festivals soon. But should we start jumping in to the track list?
Yeah, let's go ahead. We've got Straight Up, we've got Whacked Out Murals. What did you think?
This was a real eerie number at first. It kind of came in with a little dark vibe. I really liked the stripped back beat. It was effective. It kept me engaged, and it was a good introduction to the album.
Yeah, the intro got me hyped for what was going to come on the album. The singing sample was kind of a bit like ethereal, a bit spooky, I want to say. I don't think he was going for that style, but it kind of got me a bit goosebumps, like, oh, what's going to happen here? When the beat kicks in, there was around 145, I think it was. It absolutely pops off. It goes so hard. And this is the track where I kind of heard a lot of lyrical influences, and one of the main things that he was doing was not firing shots at Lil Wayne, but, you know, mentioning Lil Wayne and the whole Super Bowl debacle where Jay-Z's booked Kendrick over Lil Wayne. And Lil Wayne this morning actually tweeted out saying, man, what the fuck I do? I just be chilling and they still come for my head. And basically he's saying, like, why are you coming after me? But in my opinion, that's not what Kendrick was doing with this track. He was just laying it out how it was. He was explaining the situation and saying, look, Lil Wayne's probably mad that I got this over he did.
I mean, I don't particularly think anything on here was a straight up diss track. I really saw this as more. He was kind of taking aims at a little bit of the industry. Obviously, Lil Wayne mentioned specifically with the Carter 3, but yeah, it wasn't as proper diss. It just was there.
I mean, Lil Wayne mentioned specifically by name in some bars in this track.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So are we at some point going to get Wheezy firing shots at Kenny? Because that would be insane. And I don't think he should do it because he'd get wiped off the face of the earth. And I don't want to see that from an absolute legend.
We move off this, though, onto Squabble Up, which is a big, massive banger. I love this. It had me vibing the whole way through the track.
This gives me classic Kenny vibes. Squabble up, squabble up, squabble up. I'm all for it. The intro, the beat kicking, everything. It's exactly what I expect from a modern day Kendrick Lamar.
And at one point in the song, there was a really weird scream that kind of reminded me of something we'd hear from a Kanye West project. You know, like a kid goes, ah!
Like a Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare.
Exactly. But I think that this might be potentially my favourite song on the album. It doesn't feel too manufactured to where it's a pop hit. It's still very Kendrick, but it's catchy enough where I think anyone can vibe to this track.
And we move off that onto Luther, which is a more chiller track from what we've heard from the first two. And I really like how smooth Kendrick's flow is on this track. And this was a swaying track. I like to classify it as head bopper tracks and there's swaying. This is a definite sway.
Well, I felt like we went from a serious start, pretty heavy, downtrodden, up to Squabble Up, big vibes, a lot of different energies going on. And then this, I thought, was a good breath of fresh air that we needed, a minute to relax. And I thought the scissor feature worked really well. Them two together, there's a track later in the album as well, are a perfect pairing for me. The voices, the way that they can match on that relaxed vibe is perfect.
Yeah, this is a good little breakup for the album. I think it kind of brings it down a bit. We move off this into Man at the Garden, which has a really weird ass intro beat, but it's not that weird considering Kendrick Lamar's beats in the past have been a bit sporadic.
And I think this was a really serious topic as well in many ways, talking about the egos of rich and famous and powerful people. And that's the type of thing that Kendrick has spoke about and addressed throughout his career. And it's nice to see that he's got that in him still. He's ready to put some really good lyrics together to address something that's actually going on in real life and something he's clearly been thinking about.
And he added like a rain sample in the background, which kind of set the scene a bit nicer, but it was so quiet and so like dampened out that I actually had to take my headphones off when I was listening to this because I genuinely thought it was raining outside. And I'm not gonna lie, he had like a chill flow, but bro was bringing the energy, the anger in his voice. You could hear it. And I'm not gonna lie, he really do be deserving it all though. Like he just be do be deserving it all.
Well, on that note, we'll move on to Here Now featuring Doddy Six. Is that how you say it? Dod Six? I don't really know how you say his name.
No idea.
But anyway, really strange song for me. Again, this brought back the vibes of the first song. A bit of angst in there, a bit of anger. What did you think?
It was a dirty bass line. It was a bit of a weird track for me. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. There were some very strange references in there. He mentions something, a square on the back like Jack Dorsey, mentioning the Twitter founder who also founded the company that made Square, which is the payment provider. And I thought, that's a very, very bizarre reference to make on a track. And also on this, he says, strangling a goat, which do we really need to spell out what that means? Like, there is very subtle Drake disses throughout this entire album, but at no point does he say Drake's name, which is also something why I think he didn't include Not Like Us on this album, which a lot of people thought that he might, and he's completely avoided it. And I think it's because he just doesn't want to utter Drake's name on an album.
No, and I respect that. I think Kendrick's a good enough artist. Just move on from that. You had your beef. That's it pretty much. You can reference what happened every now and then and how you won. That's fine. But there's no need to concentrate on it. But I've noticed in this song there was a really strange sound effect of like a water drop throughout. And when I was listening to it, paired with kind of the more angry vibes, it made me feel like I was in like a basement listening to something. Do you know what I mean?
Or like getting some kind of water torture treatment or something.
It was weird. But going off water torture, we'll go on to Reincarnated.
Going off water torture. Yeah, this track, it starts with the same vocal sample that we heard in the first track, the same vocalist. I can't remember. I saw who she was. She was some figure, maybe mariachi or some style like that. Really cool to do a callback on a track called Reincarnated, almost like he's reincarnating that sample. This was just heavily Tupac inspired all the way through.
Do you know what? Weirdly, when I listened to this, I went to see if Dre produced it because I felt like, do you know some of those stranger Eminem songs back in the day?
Yeah.
It sounded like the same type of beat as that. He didn't produce it. And actually, Jack Antonoff's one of the big producers on this album. Bro has produced every big album for the last 4 years. But I really liked the vibes of this. I thought, again, we brought it back down to some dark energy and then this hit it back up, some kind of like gangster rappy type. I really liked it.
There's a sick bass guitar throughout, and I think that lends to the whole Tupac vibe that he was going for. I don't know if he's trying to say the Reincarnated is Tupac coming back. I don't know if that's the kind of style that he's going for and trying to make that point. But this song made it onto my playlist because I think this is potentially the best off the album. This and Squabble Up are my two favorites so far. But we move off this onto TV Off. What do you think?
Mustard!
Yeah. Mustard!
Again, I've actually got wrote down here, hats off to the producers on this album, because at this point it was switching up vibes so much in such an effective way with not only Kendrick's flow, but how the track molds together and still fits into a cohesive album. I was really impressed. I thought this was another head boppy track, had me vibing throughout. It was just, I'm just loving it. I'm loving it at this point.
Fun ass beat, fun ass flow, fun ass track. That's what I've got written down here. And I love a Kenny track with a beat switch. And when that beat switch comes in and it changes song entirely, every time it goes infinitely harder than the first half. And this didn't fail. We've obviously got Mustard on it. And yeah, just fantastic.
I just love the fact that at the start of this song, when I heard the initial beat, I literally wrote down shout out to the producers. And then halfway through the song, it switched and Kenny gave a massive shout out to the main producer.
To the producer.
I was like, he must have been thinking the same thing in the studio, like they deserve this. But we'll move on to Dodger Blue, which is featuring Ink, Roddy Ricch, and Sam Dew.
So this brings it back down again. We've got more of a chiller vibe, and I really like the kind of difference between the heavier, more aggressive tracks and the chiller tracks. And there's a lot of tracks in this where he kind of brings the chill vibes whilst having that aggression in his voice still. He's very good at getting across emotion in his voice, and yeah, I like that.
I must admit, I wasn't a huge fan of the features on this one. I genuinely think that this is potentially the lowest point on the album for me. Out of all the tracks, so far I've been vibing the whole time. This is the first one where I'm like, I wouldn't really want to bang this on my playlist. It just didn't offer as much in terms of lyricism nor flow for me, and that's obviously with so many features kind of expected.
I enjoyed the track, but like you're saying, it didn't do a whole lot for me because it's not really my style, not really my vibe.
Going off, we go on to Peekaboo, which is featuring Az Cheek and Doddy Six again. What do you think of this one?
I quite liked it, I liked the hook that was going on, the what they talking about nothing, and then there's the bing bop boom 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 bop bam, which I wonder is a Super Hot Flame reference, that I'm not a rapper, so stop rapping at me. And Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great.
I thought this one was a little bit repetitive. That was the goal of it, though. And I did like the way that the kind of chorus and repeated parts were delivered. So I enjoyed it. But again, I feel like these two songs just weren't my favourite. In tandem, they didn't offer as much in terms of thought-provoking as the rest of the album did, which is kind of what I come to expect from Kendrick.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot going on, but then I also think it's good that Kendrick has dialed this down a bit. I've got some notes towards the end of this that I'll go over, but I kind of liked that this wasn't a conceptual album because I feel like that can get overplayed and it can get to a point where I'm like, I just want some fun, throwaway tracks from Kendrick. I want some things I can just whack on and not have to think about too deeply.
I agree, but I just think that, for example, this one, it wasn't fun enough where I enjoyed it as a fun track either. It wasn't to that level where I was like, oh, this is like a proper sick little bop. It was just okay. Yeah. Not a horrible song. It doesn't ruin the album. It kind of fits in well. But we'll move off that onto Heart Part 6.
I didn't think we'd be seeing this title on this album. He has basically stuck the middle finger up at Drake there and said, I don't give a shit that you took my track name. I'm still going to release Heart Part 6. I don't know why you thought you'd be able to block me with that.
It's the fact he didn't even reference Drake throughout the entire song as well.
Or the whole album.
Well, it slightly did in times, or at least you could interpret it as that. But this song for me, going off what I just said about the last track, is that introspective lyrical ability, storytelling Kendrick at his finest.
I think it needed to be with a heart track. Will bro ever run out of heart? That's the question. Are we going to get up to like Heart Part 50 soon? Like, is it just going to keep going?
Depends how many albums he does, but it's just another great one. I really enjoy these type of tracks, and I think at this point in his career, he's just absolutely nailed it, and we know he has, and he's done it again. Should we move on to GNX, the title track, which is featuring Hitter J3, Pacer, and Young Threat?
Another crazy beat, which, you know, we've come to expect from Kendrick. I think a lot of his work, he has some fire beats, but at the same time, he has these beats that make you question what's going on. But then when his flow comes in, he just manages to tie the beat to the track in a way that I don't think many artists could do. Like, if you took a lot of beats from this project alone and gave them to a different artist, I don't think they could do any of them any good. I think they'd absolutely fluff it and it would just sound like shit. But Kendrick comes every time and just delivers such great lyrical work and flows and just everything.
I love the excitement there. Do you know what this reminded me of? There was a bar in this where it was "Tell 'em Kendrick did it," yeah, and it kept doing that again and again throughout the song. It reminded me of Blame Game. On My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, because it was going Yeezy taught me, and it kind of just, you know, that Tell 'em Kendrick did it, Yeezy taught me. Anyway, I actually wasn't a huge fan of this song. Again, I thought the features kind of let it down a little bit, and I'm not saying that in like a horrible way. I think that that's happened a few times throughout this album where I think if it was a different feature, the song would have been much better. Not that this is bad, but it just could have been better.
Do you not think it could also be because of the fact that this album was clearly put together within a couple of months, and whilst it's a phenomenal album, that doesn't give many artists that much time? I know Kendrick can drop like that, like he can come up with a song overnight and it'll be an absolute bop. We've seen that in Not Like Us. That was such a quick response to have such an amazing track. But I think some of the features might not be able to keep up to that level of quality in that short period of time.
But the thing is, he can get any feature in the world, most likely, pretty much. So I think that that's not really an excuse. But again, I'm not saying that it's a horrible, awful track. I'm just saying it really wasn't my favourite on this project.
One thing that I just wanted to reference was the fact that there was a Lizzie McGuire bar, which just took me out of the song. As soon as I heard him reference Lizzie McGuire, I thought, that's the most rogue. With the Jack Dorsey earlier, Lizzie McGuire here, you're just throwing out the weirdest reference. But we move off that onto the final track, which is Gloria. What did you think?
This is another track with SZA, and I think that, again, this was taking us back down to a calmer level, but it brought it up in moments with the flow, brought a little bit of energy, and I think that this was a really good way to end the album. Him and SZA, I say it again, fantastic together. I really liked it. This could be one of my favourite tracks. This made it straight onto the playlist. Calm vibes, but still unique ability throughout.
Yeah, it's a super chill outro, and I think it matches the vibes of the intro very well. So it kind of like, it gives us this little package of an album where it's almost sandwiched between these two tracks that you could kind of interchange. Like if you had the intro at the end or the outro at the beginning, I think it would work either way. And yeah, I think it's a great way to finish off the album. And speaking of the album, let's move on to some general thoughts. What did you think of the project as a whole?
Obviously a massive surprise. Wasn't expecting it at all. Love Kendrick, so when I seen it, I was like, this could be amazing. And I think it was, to be honest. I think the producers did a great job of effectively creating different pockets of vibes, but also making the album flow really well. Kendrick's, as a rapper, you know, Kendrick's elite. He's always going to be elite. But I think that some songs were more fun, which we haven't seen so much in recent years, maybe since like Damn and a couple Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe. There's only a couple of those fun type big banger songs in Kendrick's entire discography, whereas I'd say there was 2 or 3 on here. So just the whole premise of the album was executed well. What did you think, Tim?
Yeah, the references on it are very recent. There's a lot of recent stuff going on, so you can tell this project was cobbled together very quickly. So for the quality that we got from the time period that they would have had, I'm very impressed by it. And this does feel like a project where Kendrick is just rapping. He's not trying to do a conceptual thing. He's not trying to be too over the top. He's kind of keeping it downplayed, which I like. It's quite refreshing because, like I was saying earlier, I love Kendrick's concept albums, don't get me wrong, but I do sometimes miss that fun side of Kendrick where he's maybe not trying to have a million layers in his song, he's not trying to get a message across, he's just having fun rapping, and that's exactly what this project feels like. And people will say it's mid due to him just having fun and it not being so introspective and deep, but how many other artists have had such a good run of albums that have all been conceptual? Let him have a fun album.
I don't even think people would say this is mid. I think that this will get pretty positive reviews.
It will, but there will be people out there saying it's mid because it's not a concept album. And that's because they've come to expect that, but maybe don't have such high expectations. Let the man do what he wants.
I think at the same time, though, his last album, Mr. Morale, wasn't received particularly well, and that was more of a concept style album. I actually think this is what most people wanted from Kenny. This goes, obviously, Damn was a little bit more like this in terms of, although it was facing serious topics, the production, and it was ready for pop, ready for radio. I think there's a few songs on this like that, but there's also enough storytelling vibes where even people that love Kenny's conceptual work will get what they want out of this, in my opinion.
And having Jack Antonoff as a producer on this was very rogue, but also I think he helped to kind of mold some of the songs into more, I want to say, fun and songs that you could hear on the radio, perhaps. And Jack Antonoff got me jacking my Antonoff, I'll tell you that, listening to this album. Whoa!
On that note, what would you rate this album out of 10?
This is getting a solid 7 out of 10. It's not his greatest work, but it is by far not his worst. I don't think Kendrick has released a project that I haven't liked since Section 80. I didn't not like Section 80, but he's just been on such good form since then that, yeah, 7 out of 10.
See, on this, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I think out of all the rap projects this year, this is one of the best ones. Like, this is better than a Coup de Grace, Death of Slim Shady. Like, it is, but this is what I mean. And you're comparing these massive rappers. This is one of the best albums of the year in the rap music category. So I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10.
It's fair. I can't fault that at all.
Well, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please do remember to like and subscribe. We review all the latest big rap projects that come out, and not just that, but lots of other videos as well.
Thank you very much for watching.